Hi, this is Katie Jarvis with Managing the Mess. This video is part of a larger series that I'm creating on behavior management in the art room. This is my 21st year teaching, half of which has been in a Title I school. So I do not teach rainbow, magical, unicorn children. In fact, I've learned a lot of things the hard way. I'm creating this video for teachers that are starting out so that they can learn some tips and tricks to be successful, but also for teachers that have been around for a while. Teachers are lifelong learners, and classroom management is something that you continually need to level up on to stay on top of your teaching game and make your job easier. In this video, we'll be taking a deep dive into how to encourage positive behavior in the art room. We're going to start by breaking down what you need to do before students even enter your room to improve classroom behavior. Now, the number one piece of classroom management advice that you've definitely heard is that you need to build relationships with students. And where this is great advice, it looks very different in an art room when you're seeing hundreds of students each week. So how do you build those relationships when you've got that amount of students? Well, you need to make sure that students feel a certain way when they're in your classroom. So when you're planning things out about how you want your class to run, what you want your rules to be, what you want your procedures to be, you need to imagine what it's like to be a student in your class. Students need to feel that you are organized. They need to feel welcomed. They need to feel that they are important and cared for. So you need to set up a plan of how you're going to teach to students what those things are explicitly. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're not going to do. You can see my video about how I start art on my channel. Check that one out next if you haven't. But each week I revisit some of these behavior expectations, and even when things are getting rusty with a certain rule or procedure, I will go over them during the school year at any time with all of my classes so that we are sure that we are on that same note. What you need to do as the art room teacher is defend your rules, defend your management plan. When I realized that I was having success with this was when I had a student that was new join the class, and the student began to misbehave one day. Started to use some inappropriate language, kind of slid down in his chair, like he was just going to blow this class period off. And the student next to him, that had been my student for a long time, no means a perfect student, said to him, "We don't do that here." And that pressure of me being the one that was always telling students what to do and correcting and yelling, that pressure went away because I realized that my students cared about my classroom the same way that I did because I'd instilled that in them. And they were passing this on to that new student. So you need to come up with a plan. You need to come up with what is your behaviors that you're looking for, what are the behaviors you're not looking for, and make that very clear and very visual for students. You need to teach this explicitly. Now, if you're in the beginning of the school year, you have a great opportunity of starting over. I love that fresh start every year for you. But if you are in a spot where behavior is just not so good, you can take some time and plan out, how do you want this to look? You can do a we're starting over the year day where you just take back your classroom. It is never too late to pull a class back in and get them excited about art. Now, your job also before they come in is to plan amazing lessons to motivate students. I always say that if I wasn't an art teacher, I would want to be in advertising. So what I like to do is convince my students that the lesson that I am presenting to them is amazing, it's awesome, and by the time I'm done giving out all the directions, they literally cannot wait to get started. That type of feeling is what I want for my students and what I want for your students. So pick projects that you are excited about. Be organized and have things ready for when they walk in so that you feel good and you've got less stress on your shoulders and you are ready to welcome those students. Misbehaviors occur when you are looking for artwork or trying to figure out what class is this going to be doing today? Who are you guys? What? When your brain is doing that, you're not at your best. You've got to be organized. You've got to have your plan set out. You've got to have your focus on the students when they get there. So all the other crazy management things and materials and projects, that already needs to be there. When the students arrive, that's your stage for performing and convincing them that what they're about to do today is the best project ever. So how do you increase positive student behavior during your lesson? Well, you teach what good listening looks like. Art teachers love that Mona Lisa listening where hands are still, eyes are forward, and lips are zipped. But go a step further, make sure you have a visual that you're referring to each and every class, and make sure you're telling them what to do with the rest of their body. How do you want them to sit on the carpet? How should they be sitting in their stools? This is going to give a definition for students so that they're clear that they are doing what is required. Now, when a student is not showing you good listening, you need to make sure that you address that. One way that I make it clear for students that it's a time to listen is I have a sign with a yellow zone, and that's usually for when we're doing call and response on the carpet, and I have a red zone, and on the carpet, that's a time where they're looking and they're listening. If they have a question or a comment, they need to raise their hand. But that red zone visual is extremely helpful for my younger students and for my ESOL language learners. Now, when you have a student that begins talking during your lesson, you need to stop and address that. You've already defined what good listening is, and they are not following that direction. You don't want this to snowball. You have to imagine, what is it like to be a student in your class? Maybe art is your favorite class, and you're sitting down in art and you're listening to your art teacher and you can't wait to get started, but she's allowing the people next to you to giggle and laugh and have a little side conversation. You start to not feel so good inside. You start to not feel so good about that art teacher and being in that class because the art teacher is not controlling the class so that you can all have fun together. She's saying one thing, but she's not following through. Okay, if you're saying this is good listening, then that's what you need to require from all of your students. Okay, high expectations can be met by all students. All students want to learn, especially art, when they come to your class. Now, there are things during your discussion that you can do to help facilitate the conversation moving about positively. Anything that you can do with different motions students love to do, and also throughout your lesson, refocusing them back to that Mona helps a lot. I like to do something like, can I get a clap, clap, elbow tap? Now show me your Mona. And they'll do it back, the same thing. And that just kind of refocuses as we're maybe shifting to a different slide or a different step in the directions. So they've got that good listening back and they are ready to move forward. Another thing that I like to do, and I notice this every time that I see someone speak in front of students that doesn't normally speak in front of kids, they will just enthusiastically ask a question and students will just yell out the answers. Because experienced teachers know that we will ask a question by saying this: raise your hand if. So hands are already up, and then we state the question. So we already have that hand in the air. Students are already knowing what's expected. If they know the answer, they know it's not a time to shout it out because we're saying raise your hand if. Another one that I like, especially when there's lots of questions going on in my class, especially in the younger grades, I feel like this happens, is we do 1, 2, 3, and then back to me. So I will take 3 questions or comments, but then at each and every time we move right back to my lesson and keep things moving forward. Another one that I like to do is tell students that we're not going to do what if questions. So you might start to get some questions of like, what if an elephant comes into the art room? And what if I cut my hand? And what if I spill some paint? And it can just go on forever and ever. And you need to explain that to your students. We're not going to ask lots and lots of what if questions because that game literally never ends. So I usually just state this to my students. They kind of get what I'm talking about. And then we're able to move on with our lesson and it doesn't come up again. I like to also do a strategy that I believe I picked up from Dr. Jean, and that is good with the younger kids. If you know it, blow it. So I'll explain that if you know the answer, you're going to blow it into your hand. We're going to hold our hands up, and then you're going to let the answer out. So it's allowing for a little bit of think time during that lesson. Now, when your students are working on projects, it's probably the easiest time to get that positive student engagement. But here are some tips that I have found to help keep students on track and calm during the art making process. My number one tip would be keep the lights off. I typically have the lights dimmed. I have a lot of natural light in my classroom. I'm very lucky, but I keep the lights off just to get that calm mood. I help students to get that feeling of what is it like if we all just kind of get lost in our art and enjoy it. Sometimes I set this up by doing 5 minutes of silent art at the very beginning of the class. If you guys have had a rough time during the lesson, this is a great way to reset your class. If someone talks, you simply add a minute. Once they've gotten that feeling of what it feels like to work and be in control of themselves and enjoying getting lost in their work, they will pull that into the rest of your class. So when you go back into allowing them to talk quietly, you'll notice that the noise level does go down. Now, throughout my class, if I do have students that get noisy, and I really have set this expectation, so I can't even remember the last time that this happened. And you'll find this too. As you get better with your classroom management, those routines and those procedures, your students will just do them automatically. They will take care of things for you and your job will be made easier. But if students are too loud in my class, I have a little electronic doorbell and I have a remote control that I'll press, and I don't let students see this. I hear that sound and oh my goodness, that sound goes off every time that a class is too loud. It's like a noise sensor. It's so annoying. And when that happens, I'll put a frown up because I keep a happy and sad board for student behavior. And if this happens twice in the same class, we will have 5 minutes of silent art. So wherever we are in the class period, we set a smaller visual timer so the students know that we will be silent for 5 minutes. Other things that I do to encourage students to work quietly that I've been really enjoying this year, and the students have too, is podcast. So I would encourage you to already have a quiet environment when you start this. You don't want to go from crazy chaos to trying to listen to a podcast because that's going to not work and you're just going to be shushing everyone. But when you already have that quiet environment that the students have decided they enjoy that and they get that feeling for what that is like, I introduced podcasts. So for my upper grades, we have been doing Whose Amazing Life, which is a podcast from Wondery. I'll be sure to link it in the description down below because my students are obsessed. Now, I do this one with grades 4 through 6, and it's a podcast where you are hearing about someone's life, but you don't know who it is. So it starts in their childhood and it's in the first person. So if there is a female narrator, then you know that it's going to be a woman that you're hearing about. It could be someone that lived long ago. It could be someone that is famous and still alive today. And the students love this. What I have them do is if they think they know who it is, they can raise their hand or come up to me and kind of whisper into my ear and I'll let them know if they've guessed correctly. So students are listening for those clues, and from week to week, they keep asking me for this podcast. The only issue I've had with this is some students are so excited about it that they've started to listen to this podcast at home with their families, and occasionally we'll listen to the same one here and then they've already heard it. But that's a really good problem to have, that students are enjoying that. They're able to enjoy the podcast while they're working and it cuts down on talking. I do allow students to talk during the podcast, but I talk to them about it just being necessary talking. Now, this is something that I actually teach from the beginning of the year, and I call it chicken nugget talk, which is kind of a funny name. But how I came up with it is that everyone's always, already been at a table or something when they're a kid, and just some weird kid will it doesn't even matter where you are. You don't have to be in the cafeteria, but you remember a kid saying something like, if you like chicken nuggets, raise your hand. And right, you stopped everything you were doing and both your hands went up immediately. And that's what happens when kids hear a question like that. And that can happen in art. There are conversations that are chicken nuggets. They are so distracting that everybody has to stop what they're doing and respond. Now, I discourage that, and we call it chicken nuggets. So kids will say, hey, stop talking about chicken nuggets. Or I'll say, oh, I'm hearing too much chicken nugget talk. And we talk about what kind of talking is helpful. So talking is helpful if you're asking somebody a question, if you're quietly giving somebody a compliment, but it's done in like a whisper voice. What is needed? What are those necessary conversations that you have to have? That's fine during our podcast, but we keep any other chit chat, any chicken nugget talk to a minimum. I'm popping back in here because I realized I forgot to add what podcast I enjoy with my younger students. So as low as first grade, I have done this podcast has Fleas, which is a super adorable podcast about a dog named Waffles and a cat. And they all have their own podcast inside the house. And it's kind of a dueling podcast type of situation that is hilarious, has great sound effects that kind of tends to pull them back in with the listening. Unfortunately, that podcast only has one season, so we quickly kind of went through that. And now we're currently enjoying Melon's House Party. I believe both of these are from Wondery Podcast. And again, I will link that down below. Now, you may be wondering, do I do a podcast every single week? I do think that that would kind of lose the novelty of enjoying the podcast to do it each and every week. Often I will, just depending upon the project, plan if this is a podcast day or not. If it's a very high energy activity like clay, or maybe we're doing painting, but during one of the steps, they have to go wash their paintbrush and come back with another color, and there's a lot of movement to get different materials, that would probably be a day where I don't do a podcast. Days when we're more in our seats, doing quiet focus work, doing planning, those are my podcast days, and it's been a wonderful addition to my class this year. Other strategies that you can use to encourage positive behavior during working time is quiet critters. I know Cassie Stevens is a big fan of these. I sometimes do quiet contests where we do the warm colored tables versus the cool colored tables. And if someone's talking or one side is being louder, then they get a point. We see which side wins. It's all just for fun. Another thing I like to do is point out energy shifts. So I say, oh, I've really noticed that people are getting very excited about painting and the noise level is getting to be a little bit too much. Or I notice that the people that are working quietly are producing the most beautiful artwork because they are focused and their hand is still and their eyes are looking at their paper. And this really encourages students to kind of slow down because they want to be part of the students that are receiving that praise. So any positive encouragement you can give, any praise will help students to stay on task. Creating fun projects, offering help to students when needed, also help them be engaged. Don't be afraid to have students help each other if they finish early. That's also another strategy that keeps people that work a little bit quicker still engaged in the lesson. Give them cleanup jobs if they finish early. I love to have students pre-clean because it makes our job easier in the end. When it comes to misbehavior during cleaning up and lining up, most all of this can be avoided by clearly giving directions, teaching where things go and what expectations are. Another tip that I have for cleaning up and lining up is also to have students give feedback with a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or thumbs to the side, reflecting upon how did it go for that day. So they know that you know they did a great job or that there's things that you need to revisit and work on when they come back the following week. I have more information about cleaning up and lining up and how to encourage positive behavior in separate videos. Be sure to check those out next.